Let's have a look at another question. This one's from the Tropical Rainforest Unit. Explain the impacts of deforestation on the environment. Use figure 4 and your own understanding for a 6 marker. Now, obviously, there's quite a few things they have asked you to do here. So in an exam, quickly, you've got about 30 seconds to underline, circle the key things they're asking you here. So I've done this for you here. So obviously it's an explain question, so that's the command word. The focus is on the impacts of deforestation, so not like the causes. And it's so important that you stick to the question. So the impacts, and they specifically pointed out the environment here. Okay, now you got to use the figure 4 and your own understanding. So let's have a look at the figure. So here we could see an image. Now you have to, in your first paragraph, very quickly analyze that image, explain that impact through that image. You can see orangutans almost lost here in what they used to call home. Now you could imagine that will impact their kind of population. So let's have a look at my first paragraph. I talk about this. So this is, a model answer. So let's have a quick look. So my first paragraph, so follow this paragraph in the sense as though, let's have a look. So the impacts of deforestation can be devastating as shown on figure 4. So I really go into it and say, I say the word figure 4. Now, I point it out, I've put it in bold there. So the figure shows a huge loss of what? Biodiversity. You're expected to use those kind of key terms. So we can see that actually habitats have been lost here. I then go on and talk about actually how, to explain it, I'll say, rainforests are extremely biodiverse. Again, another key term, ecosystems. You have hundreds of thousands of different kind of rare species and mammals, and we've got plants. And then the point I've underlined here, that actually, to explain it, to finish off this point, I would say, cutting down these trees puts these animals at huge risk of extinction. They've lost their homes. They're going to have to probably migrate somewhere else, and that could be quite problematic. And we've got this huge issue of kind of almost animals being displaced, and eventually their numbers drop. So that will give you 2 marks, guys. I'll try and obviously, in the real life, you have to keep it a bit more shorter. Obviously, this is looking like quite a bit of lines here, so I'll move on very quickly. Furthermore, so I'm using my connectives. I now look at the question. I've used the figure. I don't need to talk about the figure anymore. I talk about my own understanding. So you should use a country here. So in Malaysia, I say that actually deforestation leads to a lot of what? Soil erosion. That's the point I've put out in bold. That's my point. I put a full stop. I then, really explain the point here now. When trees are removed from the ground, literally pulled out, the soil that has been held there, that's taken thousands of years to be kind of almost held there, all of a sudden it is kind of almost ripped apart because the roots bind the soil together. I use that phrase, okay? I use that sentence there. So I say that actually the soil is then easily then exposed to what? Wind and rain, especially in the rainforests, causing it to be blown and washed away. But now what's the problem with that? When it's easily blown and washed away, that soil, it becomes obviously very loose and then becomes infertile. So, very little vegetation can grow here, which can be quite problematic for any form of kind of biodiversity to kind of almost thrive again. And then that should give you 4 marks so far. But again, I'll keep it much shorter as when I'm writing it in real life. But this is giving you the details. The last point, again, this could be quite short. I would say another point about how it impacts the environment. Actually, trees act as carbon sinks, because I'm really talking about the environment here. What is that idea that they're carbon sinks? Well, they absorb CO2 through the process of photosynthesis, releasing oxygen. And I mentioned that actually, CO2 is a greenhouse gas, really explaining why that's a bad thing. If removed, this process stops. The process of them absorbing CO2 stops, but actually, the stored carbon in these trees is also released into the atmosphere, and that, this line here, which I've underlined, it contributes to climate change, therefore causing glaciers to continuously melt and sea levels to rise.